This video is brought to you by HalloCasa. Our tool transforms independent local real estate agents to global real estate agents. Create your own profile for free and get contacted by international investors. Sign up with the link in the description. Hello and welcome everyone to our 152nd session of HalloCasa. My name is Michael and today I'm talking to Keely Capel from Vilamoura in Portugal. Keely is owner and managing broker of Private Luxury Collection, a small real estate boutique brokerage in the south of Portugal. Private Luxury Collection is a small family team with a lifelong love affair with Portugal, and they treat every client as a personal friend. Keely, welcome to the show. I'm really pumped to have you on the show. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Hi, thanks, Michael. I'm grateful for being on the show as well. Okay, so you've done a great intro on me. I am the owner of Private Luxury Collection, and I've been in the industry here in Portugal now for 18 years. So coming up nearly 2 decades in the industry. And for me, as you can tell by my accent, I'm not Portuguese. I relocated myself here in my 20s. So I have kind of a deep personal connection to assisting people with the experience of relocating and international transactions. I started my career actually building up another agency that became national. It was the largest nationally, independently owned national agency in the industry. But for me, the bespoke hand-holding customer care, like the concierge service, was lacking in that business model. So I decided to step out and to launch Private Luxury Collection to really, I guess, fill that gap in the market where people were treated as people and their worries and concerns were considered, and that the overall process was also supported, not just the transaction of buying a house. I'm a mum of
quickly,
two.
directly, maybe jump into there. Like, if you say that people were more treated like a human, are you referring to clients or employees?
Yeah, I am. I think that there is a tendency sometimes for brokerages and agents to get really zoned in on numbers and how many transactions they're selling and got to do more and got to beat last year or got to outdo a colleague. And unfortunately, in that process, clients lose out because they become numbers rather than people. And especially when you're buying overseas, whether you're going to relocate yourself or whether you're having, say, a second home or an investment property, it's a whole new market for you. You don't know who the best plumber in town is. You don't know who the accountant is that can help you do your tax return. You don't know where to go to get the various different groceries that you might want in your day-to-day life. And I think that sometimes clients get neglected in that sort of process where people are so focused on achieving more all the time. And that was one of the underlying things for me with starting up Private Luxury Collection, was to really rebuild relationships. So for me, it's not about just selling houses, it's about building lifelong, lasting relationships. And a lot of my clients have become personal friends.
That's very well said. Now, doing that on a one-by-one basis, it sounds obviously easy to say, okay, I treat you like a friend, I treat you like a family family member. How have you ensured to processize that one or systemize that one into an entire company to make sure that all the employees of Private Luxury Collection do that and follow through? Do you have any checks and balances and any processes particularly in place?
Yeah, we do. So it starts from the top down, basically. So we are a small, close-knit team. The people who work in my agency have a long track record that I know of personally that deliver that level of service and experience already to their clients. So that's the first thing. Nobody within the team is a fly-by-night person, even if they're a new agent to newly qualified agent. We still look for those qualities in people where they care, where they they want to help and it's not just about the transaction. So that's one of the first things that we do in terms of like our recruitment and hiring process. We also act, I guess, a lot more like a family than a business. So we're all personal friends. We've all become personal friends. We spend a lot of time communicating with each other to ensure that the clients remain communicated with. And then there's processes and systems in the background. So we have various different automations, various different checklists, drop-in dates that we know, and we schedule everything. So if you didn't schedule it, it would get missed. So every time a thought comes into our head, it gets noted down somewhere and put into a calendar with a date. So it does require some work to ensure that clients do receive that level, but I think that pays off because the rapport we have with our clients, the trust we have from our clients, and the reviews that we get. I mean, I would say 80% of our business alone, maybe actually higher, is recommendations and referrals.
I can exactly imagine this one. This would have been my next question, that potentially, since you have such a high client satisfaction, that most of them are coming also from referrals. You have, according to your LinkedIn, you incorporated or started officially during COVID, like 2021, while the entire team has a huge experience in real estate. Give us maybe an overview of starting the company. How were there maybe the challenges as also creating the team, finding good business partners and stuff? What was there your thought process, and what do you think maybe you could have done better, and maybe also some challenges? It's always the same when you start a new business. Nothing is really going very, very smoothly.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I do reflect continuously, and I guess I have an element of perfectionism. So for me, sometimes I can get stuck in thinking what could I have done better, what could have been done differently. Again, this whole business was born out of people asking me for my help and my assistance. When I stepped out of the other agency, I was a single mum to two young children. It was just in the run up to COVID, just over the course of COVID really starting, that I was detaching myself from that company. And I really kind of thought, I can't do this anymore. I need to take a break and take stock. But then it sort of came about because it was, Keely, my son is looking to relocate here. He's currently trapped in this country due to COVID. He's lost his job. He wants to move here. Can you help him find a house? Keely, we have to go back to England. We're not going to be using the house anymore because of the COVID situation. Could you help us sell the property? So these were existing contacts that I already had from being in the industry. So I was like, okay, all right, let's do this. So it was challenging starting up in COVID. We had no office. We had limited freedom, let's say, to move around, to network, to connect. So it was tough going that first year or two, but I used my sphere, my contacts. I utilized my knowledge of the industry. And actually back in COVID, I was doing virtual tours. So I would be going into properties totally alone on video and walking the client through the property. But I took it a step further because some of these clients had never been to the locations in which these houses were based. So I would mount them on my dashboard, and then I would drive to the areas and I would be showing them, okay, this is where the house is. This is how far it is to the supermarket. This is what your local coffee shop looks like. This is the view of the beach when you walk down from the house. Those kinds of things, because they weren't able to experience that for themselves. Whereas in normal times, you get to see that. You can look at a house and then go and wander the area afterwards, and that wasn't available. So that kind of was how we started. I learned a lot actually in COVID. So we flicked over to things like doing our buyers consultations on Zoom. So we were doing face-to-face, whereas prior to COVID, a lot of that pre-work before a client arrived into Portugal was just done on the telephone. I still work on the telephone. I work on WhatsApp a lot in terms of communicating with international clients. But I do think adding the element of Zoom meetings really helped build some credibility. It helped establish a rapport. Like, they know who I am, they can see who I am. I'm not a random voice at the end of a telephone, and I overshare a lot, so a quick buyer's consultation could very well end up into an hour or longer, where I would be talking about all the different things that go into the decision making of possibly moving to Portugal or spending, an extended period of time here. In hindsight, I wish I'd moved into that model a little bit sooner. In hindsight, I wish that we had more automation in place back then as well. When I launched the company, it was literally me. It was me. I did everything. And even to this day, I wear many, many hats. So whilst I have a team, I still am out. I still generate the clients. I still generate the listings. I still go out with those clients myself personally, because I enjoy it. And that was one of my main aims with this company, was to go back to being in touch with the client and understanding what their needs really are and what their wants really are. Because again, that's totally shifted from pre-COVID and post-COVID. Clients' requirements are totally, totally different. And being a CEO who sits back and lets everybody else do the work, you don't necessarily get that level of input and direction to know where your business needs to change. So I think, looking back, maybe if AI had been around as it is now today, in its entirety, it possibly could have helped. I think hiring sooner would have been the other thing that I would have done. But I've made some mistakes along the way. I have had several agents who really weren't the right fit for our company and our clients, and we've had to part ways. We had to let them go. And sometimes it's you feel like you're taking 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. But I think it has always been the right decision for the company. And I always try and put myself in my client's shoes. So how would my client see this? What would my client think about this? How would they feel? And that's kind of my decision-making process with anything that we do in the business.
Talking about that one, what do you think are the most important traits of a good real estate broker?
Tenacity, determination, especially in the markets that we've seen. And I think this is international. I don't think it's just Portugal. The market has been so up and so down so abruptly in recent years that you really do have to have some determination, because you could lose your mind. But I think that that focus and realize that everything takes time. So, I mean, I'm an experienced agent. I've done this a long time, but I see a lot of people come into this industry and think they're going to make a lot of money very quickly and not really appreciate the level of work that has to go in order to make money. And those that make the real money are in the top 1% of agents. Everybody else is working the grind, so to speak, to make ends meet. And I think I think dedication, tenacity, hard work, and a mind for education, because there is always something new. Laws change, regulations change, markets change, and you have to be aware of that and educate yourself on that, because otherwise you'll get left behind and you're not doing your clients, you're doing a disservice to your clients if you really don't know exactly what the market is projecting, or what the law or regulation or benefits are, new tax benefits, for example.
You just mentioned the market fluctuating in Portugal, but also in the south of Portugal. Give us an overview of the status right now, of the situation. How can I imagine it as someone who doesn't know the market over there?
The market here is strong. It is actually Portugal as a whole, but in particular, the Algarve is a very stable real estate market. It doesn't fluctuate massively when it comes to price. It has seen ups and downs. Obviously, COVID hindered a lot of things for everyone around the world. We then saw record volume of sales taking place through 21, 22, and that started to slow probably mid to end 23, because again, especially in the Algarve, it's a lot of secondary homes, it's a lot of holiday homes, and also people relocating. And with things going on in the world, such as wars and politics, basically the two main things, it does have an impact on whether people decide whether they're going to make that move now, whether they're going to invest that money now, or whether they're going to wait and see. Portugal made a lot of changes at the back end of 23 as well with regards to certain regulations in the property market. So they changed a lot to do with the AL licensing, which is the rental license you need to do Airbnb. They also started, they ceased the golden visa, which was the right to citizenship through property ownership. And they then started to rework the non-habitual residency scheme, which is the tax beneficiary scheme. So those three things had fueled a market prior to COVID and probably assisted further post-COVID. And all three of those things were quite radically overhauled on the back end of the last government leaving. And so that did have an impact on the market here. And then since then, obviously, there's other world events that have taken place that also impact for myself and a lot of the Algarve. It impacts us because our main clientele are international. They're coming from the UK or the US or Canada, where we've had elections and budgets and various different other things take place. So it hasn't actually had a hugely detrimental effect on the price, because where we got to prior to those things was that we had a huge demand and a severe lack of suitable property. What happened in the aftermath of those events was that the supply started to level up with the demand, so there were more properties available for the people, but the demand has never gone away. So we've never been in a situation where the property market is in a major correction or deflation. We're still pumping out increases. I think the last increase was a 13% increase month on month, or quarter on quarter. So we're not seeing the market slow down here. We are seeing more options available in terms of the property selection, but it's still probably not enough to meet the demand. So unless that demand drops, there really isn't anything to slow the market. Sure, we have seen some price corrections in the height of the boom post-COVID, that people were just throwing properties on the market at silly prices to see if they could achieve it. Those that are now in positions that they want to sell are actually correcting their pricing to a more realistic pricing. And so I'm confident in saying that the value you look at today in today's market is a true reflection of where we're at, because we still have more demand than we have properties to meet.
You mentioned a lot of things and many things. I would like to go step by step.
Yeah, sure.
The AL license, the license for tenants, respectively, especially for property owners to be able to rent that out on Airbnb in an official way. What's the status there? It is right now. Are there certain municipalities which allow it? Are there certain areas which I am not allowed to do that, to rent it out? What's right now there the situation?
As it currently stands as of today, because then it could change. They did retract some of the legislation that was implemented in 2023. So you can now apply still for an AL license. In terms of apartments, it is still going to be more difficult than it previously was. It will be down to the local municipality as to whether or not they approve a new license, but the condominiums of the apartment blocks will not have so much control over whether or not an AL license is allowed to be granted. They can still raise concerns and voice complaints, but they won't be able to totally shut it down. It's difficult to say which municipalities will and won't allow it, because none of the municipalities have come out outwardly, down in the Algarve at least, and said we will not issue any new licenses. They will have a quota. They will look at how many licenses they already have versus the volume of property in the area, and they will make the decision. And that's kind of the line that we've been getting on that. When it comes to townhouses, villas, there's no restriction. They're free and clear. So if you're looking at investment property and you have the budget, I would probably say you're safer to go with an independent house than with an apartment, just because that process could get blocked. But one of the interesting things that they have done recently is that they have now made the licenses transferable. So initially, the original process was that you, as the owner, owned the license, not the property. So when you came to sell the property, you couldn't transfer your license to the new owner. You would have to, they would have to start the process again, and you would shut down your license. Now, AL licenses are transferable, which does mean that people can go in, and it gives an extra benefit to a seller if they have the AL license, that the new owner can take that on and not have to go through setting up a new license themselves. So that is, I think, a positive.
Absolutely. And you directly answered my follow-up question. Perfect. The NHR, what's the status there? And maybe for the audience who doesn't know about it, maybe you can give a quick overview what it entails, and then also what your status update.
I forget now when it first came into play. It was, I want to say 2015. It might have been earlier than that. It's basically, the non-habitual residency was a tax incentive to encourage people to domicile themselves for tax reasons into Portugal as tax residents. It allowed people, for example, if you were retiring and you had a pension income, it allowed you to get initially 0% tax on your pension. And likewise, if you had income sources from overseas, it was potentially allowing you to get as low as 10% taxation on global income. They did revise it a few years back, and then pensions were taxed at 10% and other earnings up to 20%, which is a lower tax rate than as a normal Portuguese citizen or existing tax resident, where the flat rate is 28%. And on income, it is tiered, so it can go up to 48%. So what that did was enable people with pensions who perhaps would have been paying another 28% tax on their pension by living in Portugal, in addition to any tax paid in the country of source, to move here and not pay additional tax on their pensions or their incomes. It allowed anybody and everybody to come in and take advantage of that tax basis, as long as you hadn't been a tax resident in Portugal for 5 years previous. What they have done now is it is still there and it is still available, but it's now linked to specific industries and areas that the government see investment needed. So if you invest in research and development or scientific research, if you invest in arts and culture or in an investment fund in Portugal, you will qualify for the non-habitual residency on all of your global income. But you can't just move as a retiree or a digital nomad and instantly get the reduced rate of tax in the way that you potentially could have done previously. So they are trying to be a little bit smarter with it, as in, if you want to come and take advantage of some tax savings, you can do it, but we want something off of you in return. Like we want people, skilled workers in specific areas, or investment into things that will benefit Portugal as a whole, as opposed to just people who are retiring and not driving the economy as greatly. I mean, I still think they add to the economy, but perhaps don't have such a mass input.
Makes absolutely sense. Thank you so much. The Brexit, what's basically there? Do you see like a very strong origin or driver for property investment in the Algarve and in Portugal?
The Brits have always been, the British and the Irish have always been two of the top main investors in the Algarve region for a very long time. Germany was also very strong, but they dropped away with the whole financial crisis, and only recently have really started to come back in as a contender. The Brits did step back after Brexit because it changed the landscape for them, whereas they could come and go as they please. They were now restricted to this 90 days, which is very confusing. It's actually a continuously rolling 90 days. So for every day you're out of the country, one day drops off of the days you've used, but it's not easy to keep track of. So a lot of people sort of shied away. Many people said, well, we're gonna sell up because we can't have our 6 months here a year. But in the last, I guess, 2 years, the Brits have started to come back in force. But what I've seen is a total change, as in they are coming back with, I would say, 90% of them now are looking at relocation. They're not buying holiday homes. They're not looking as investment primarily. They're looking at getting out of the UK.
That was my follow-up question, actually, also regarding the buyer persona, the people who are looking or who you are serving from abroad, mainly. Is it exactly those people who say, okay, I want to like have a second home, or someone who really wants to settle? And then maybe also, apart from the Brits, any other demographics you're serving?
Yeah, I think the market has definitely shifted from being a second home investment property market in the Algarve. There is most certainly an increase in the number of people relocating permanently, but it's not just the British and the Irish. We're seeing a whole shift around the world. We've seen Israelians, South Africans, as far afield as Australia and New Zealand. But I think if you look in volume, then the British and Irish are definitely back in force. The Germans, we get a lot of Germans looking, and the Nordic countries, anywhere where it's exceptionally cold in the wintertime versus down the south of Europe. But America and Canada by far have become, from a very minuscule number of transactions for those nationalities, they are now kind of one of the top nationalities, alongside Germans and Brits.
And the let's say units type, and maybe also the pricing type, the range. What is it in highest demand there? Is it like 500,000, 200,000, or like a couple of millions? Is there any median which you can give me?
I think the median now sits at something like 650,000, maybe 700,000. The honest truth is that if I had the supply of houses at 400 to 750,000 euros, I would probably sell one a day, because there is that much demand. The reality of it is, however, is there's not a lot of property in that price range. It very much depends between apartments and standalone houses. Apartments, I would say 2-bedroom apartments, somewhere in the region of 250 to 500. There's a huge a want for. And then villas, probably 500,000 in excess of millions. I mean, when you look at square meter pricing, say in Vilamoura, you're looking at somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 euros per square meter on a property. But if you step out of, it's high. You know, there are areas that are higher, Quinta Valdeloba, where you could be up to 10,000 euros per square meter in those locations. But if you step slightly outside and you look at some of the, I guess, emerging areas, because people people who are relocating here might not necessarily want to be in the centre of a tourism resort. So, you know, you start looking at the outer lying areas such as Lollet, Bolakem, Istoy, those areas, then you can you're looking at about 2,500 to 3,500 a square metre.
Regarding the let me phrase it like that. We have like so much of demand there in a certain very certain unit type. Is there also construction which is being created according to that demand, or how can I imagine that?
Yes, there is. But I don't think construction is keeping pace. And I think that's an argument that's happening across the country. We've seen a mass explosion of construction and renovation of properties to be put back out to market. A lot of it is sold or has been sold before the work has even begun. So it's being sold off plan because there's been such a shortage of property. A lot more people have taken the opportunity to invest into a property before construction's even begun. We also then have what became tiredly slow was the licensing process for the approval of new projects. And so some of these projects may have actually been submitted for approval maybe 5 years ago, and they're only just now breaking ground on it because it's taken them so long to get the licensing in place. But again, the government did make changes. They brought in the Simplex, which should speed up the planning process and allow construction to start happening within about 90 to 120 days from submittal. So it's slowly kind of getting a little bit more fluid in terms of new construction actually starting and seeing a little bit quicker to market, if you like, in terms of that. So yeah, I mean, there's a healthy, especially like in Vilamoura, everywhere you look, there is construction taking place. Vilamoura itself has in recent years changed ownership, and the company behind them have a very ambitious plan for Vilamoura and the area, and so they are investing heavily in a number of construction projects themselves, both on a residential element but also on a commercial scale. So here it's not uncommon to see at least 4 or 5 cranes in the sky at any one time.
You are serving Vilamoura only, or which area are you serving exactly in the Algarve area?
We specialize, I guess we have a kind of passionate focus on Vilamoura. We know it well. We love the area. We love what it stands for and the blend of Portuguese film culture, but with a more international vibe to it. However, because we offer that curated service to our clients in terms of a concierge service, we do search and select, and therefore we cover a wider field than just Vilamoura itself. So I would say, cover the whole of the central Algarve extensively, but we will seek and find properties, whether it's to the east or to the west, as clients require it.
Give us more details about Vilamoura. You maybe can give us an overview there for someone who hasn't been there, regarding also infrastructure, from kindergartens to hospitals to other, let's say, essentials, and then going towards attractions, so that which makes basically like Vilamoura livable and interesting to live in.
Yeah, I mean, Vilamoura was one man's dream. Andre Jordan saw a vision for what he wanted Vilamoura to be, and he was the founding father, if you like, of the area. The best way I describe it to people is, if you think of Quartera as the main city, and Vilamoura is the suburbs of Quartera, because we come under the freguesia of Quartera. But the new owners of Vilamoura really do have an extensive plan to really lift the status of Vilamoura on the world stage, really. I think I heard someone say they plan to make it the Monaco of the Algarve. In terms of what it's like here, I think I said, it's a coastal town, it's laid back, but it's got an international vibe to it. You've got the marina, which has just undergone expansion. So you've got yachts now can accommodate some of the larger sort of not super yachts, but bigger berth yachts. You've got around the marina a number of high quality restaurants, boutique shops, and there's more development going on in that marina area as well. You've then got five, what I always used to say was 5 championship golf courses, which they are. Victoria has recently just undergone a massive development. The Victoria golf course was a PGA golf course. They played the PGA there for many years. That is now going to be an ILS club. So it will be the first private golf club in Portugal, I believe, or in Europe. It's the first ILS club in Europe, that's for sure. And that's due to open this summer. I don't have an open date yet, but I know it's due to open this summer. Obviously, you've got the beaches. Falaisia is an award-winning beach. It's been a blue flag beach now for many, many years. And that extends from Vilamoura Marina all the way through to Albufeira. And then on the other side, you have Marina Beach as well. So you've got some really good beaches and boardwalks. So from the marina side, you can literally follow nature trails and boardwalks that will take you down through Quarteira, over to Val de Lobo, down through Quinta do Lago, and connect you up with the Ria Formosa at Faro Island. So there's some really good sort of trails that can be followed as well. You've got the equestrian centre that's currently undergoing a huge renovation and will go out on the national show jumping circuit again from October. We have the tennis academy, which again is undergoing a mass renovation right now to up its quality. They already host the World Championships for paddle in Vilamoura in, I think it's August. And then you've got things like all the cycle paths, the marked trails and things like that. So for me, it's the kind of place where you can come on holiday, you can have a week on the beach, you can walk around the marina and have dinner in the evenings. You've got amazing 4- and 5-star hotels to enjoy, but equally it's a place that you can come out and actually live in day to day. There are co-working spaces, some really cool coffee shops if you're a digital worker, for example. I have a young family and there's lots of stuff that I can do with my young family. Just yesterday, I took the kids out on their bikes. They rode the nature trails through the natural reserve that we have in Vilamoura, and me and my partner walked on behind them and really enjoyed the outside, and I can do that freely here. My kids can ride and scoot and do whatever they want, and I don't have to worry about the traffic or what's, the same kind of level of dangers as you would do living in probably other more city-based areas. And I have the best of both worlds because I live in a really beautiful residential area in Vilamoura where the tourist aspect is on my doorstep and I can enjoy it when I want to, but I'm also lucky enough that when I'm at home, I could be anywhere in the world. It's calm, it's peaceful. And they ran a campaign years ago, which was Vilamoura, I wasn't born here, but it's where I belong. And I know that it's an old campaign, but for me, it just totally resonates with how Vilamoura makes me feel and how I see Vilamoura. It's such a beautiful place to live and work, and I get the best of both worlds.
That was easy for you to market it and to make it very, to create some saliva in my mouth. Amazing. I love it. Regarding maybe coming back to the buying process, tips and tricks and also things potential investors should look out for if they say, okay, I am interested, I definitely would like to make the move. What do you suggest a buyer to really make sure that they are not falling into any pitfalls?
I think the first thing is a reputable agent. And I know that always sounds a little bit blasé being an agent, but you need to check out the agent, do your homework, meet a few of them, have a conversation with them. There are people that like myself who've done this a long time, fully licensed, really know their stuff, and there's also opportunists and people who maybe really don't have the level of knowledge that I think an agent should have to represent an international client. So that would be the first thing. Obviously, finding the house, again, I feel ties in with finding the right agent, because you can work with an agent who's just going to show you what they've got, or you can work with an agent who will actively go out there and seek the right property for you. And there's a big difference in those two things. When it comes to the buying process, it's relatively straightforward. It follows a similar pattern to probably a lot of places in the world. You may or may not be asked to do a reservation. If it's a new build, very often a reservation is required. If it's a resale, a private sale, then not so much. The first stage is a promissory contract, and I think one of the biggest things people need to be aware of is that signing that promissory contract is legally binding, and has financial penalties. And that's something that I have come to discover in my time. Not everybody fully understands. So you really want to do your due diligence ahead of signing anything. You want to, if you're going to do a home survey, get an inspector in, do it before you sign. If you are going to get a mortgage, make sure the bank are going to okay you for that mortgage before you sign. Because on a promissory contract, a CPCB as it's known here in Portugal, you could be depositing from 10% upwards of the overall buying cost. And if you break that as the buyer, you forfeit that deposit. It's not held in escrow, it goes to the seller. And if you've breached the contract, if you want to walk away, you have to leave that money on the table. Now, the upside of that is that if the seller breaches the contract and doesn't complete, the seller actually has to reimburse you what you've deposited and compensate you to the same value. So you do have security there as the buyer, as long as you've done your homework before you sign. And then the deed is pretty straightforward. The deed can happen the next day after the promissory contract or in 6 months' time. But I think the main thing that determines when the deed happens is the availability of moving for the seller and the buyer, and the availability of funds. Because if the money isn't in the country, you need to get it in the country. If you're mortgaging, you need to get your finance in place, and the bank needs to be present to exchange checks. So that can take logistically can take a little bit of work. I tend to tell people to expect anywhere between 3 to 6 months from finding and offering on a property to closing and having keys in hand. That said, I've seen properties exchange in 2 weeks, so it can go a lot quicker depending on all parties concerned. But I would probably say at least 3 months. The banks have been moving a lot quicker in recent years than they used to. So 3 months now with a mortgage is more or less the right time. In terms of budgeting, you have to remember that there are buying costs. There is tax involved in purchasing property in Portugal, so you have to budget. I tell clients to budget around 10%. That would cover all the tax, stamp duty. It covered the notary and legal fees. It would cover any mortgage or inspection costs as well. Generally speaking, there will be change left out of 10%, but I always say work on 10% because it gives you spare change if something unexpected comes up. But the tax here, you could be looking at, depends what price you buy at, but you could be looking at 2%, you could be looking at 8% property purchase tax. And then you're going to be looking at about 1% for a lawyer, a notary, etc., and probably about 500 to 1,000 for an inspection. Again, it varies, but you can get much more specific on that when you're working on a specific property.
Where does the mortgage financing originate normally from? So is it, let's say I'm a UK buyer, do I get the financing from a UK bank, or can I?
No, not anymore. Most of the UK banks will not finance something overseas. Getting a mortgage in Portugal as a non-resident is very, very easy. There are multiple banks, most of the main Portuguese banks as well, will offer finance to international clients. You will normally have to submit the same things you would submit on a mortgage application from your home country. The main extra thing that you would need is like a credit report, say an Experian report. And if your documents aren't in English, you may have to have them translated into Portuguese if they're in other languages. But you have UCI, Deutsche Bank, Santander, Millennium, there's a huge selection that you can choose from in terms of the banks in Portugal to finance a property purchase here.
And
they normally... Sorry, go on.
Go ahead. I'm sure you are answering my follow-up question again. Go ahead.
I was going to say, they will normally lend up to 70% of the loans of the acquisition price. So they don't do loan to value, it's loan to acquisition. So if you're borrowing 100,000, if you're buying at 100,000, they'll lend you 70. So you need, if you're going to buy with a mortgage, to have 30% deposit available.
Is there any premium in general because you're international buyer on the interest rate? Let's say, I don't know, okay. Really? Okay, that's nice.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, the only difference would be that there is sometimes more flexibility as a resident or a Portuguese citizen in terms of longevity of the mortgage. So the maximum age they lend to is 75. So they tend to not lend more than about, 35, 40 years as a mortgage, depending on how young you are. But there's sometimes a little leeway either on that or on the borrowed amount. So they may lend up to 80% as a citizen, as opposed to a non-resident where they only lend up to 70.
What's the main activity you're doing regarding your requests you're getting from investors? Is it, hey, Keely, I want to buy, send me some listings? Or is it, hey, I want this listing, I want it now? Or is it basically more on general requests? Or is it more based on, okay, I have been browsing your website for a while and I'm really interested in this one?
That's a good one. I would say it's actually pretty evenly split. We have a network of investors that are always actively looking, so we showcase them anything we get in. But in terms of incoming, it's a mix. We get people come in who have seen one specific thing with us and want to see that, and then potentially as the relationship builds, it opens up into other things. Or we get people who don't really know, they kind of know what they want, but they haven't seen anything that's really pulled them in, and then we work with them to start sourcing properties and narrowing it down, ready for them to view.
Stepping aside a little bit from your main business, you also help moms with a different initiative you have been working on. Give us an overview on your different business and your other project.
Okay, I am a certified coach with the ICF, and when I initially stepped out of my first real estate agency, I was going to focus full-time on coaching real estate agents, primarily mums, because believe it or not, women are probably more prevalent in this industry than many other industries, but this job is 24/7, very, very demanding. Clients are buying houses, they want to see them in the evening when they're not working. They have questions on the weekend, they can only get the weekends to view. And as a mum, that's really, really challenging. And I know that because I've done it myself. So I coach internationally for real estate agents, but I specialize in helping mums find that balance where they can be a rock star real estate agent, but also be home and be present with their kids and not let their business jeopardize their time with their family.
What is there maybe your common denominator as maybe for a different agent who is mom right now, what is like a common denominator where you would give as a tip to say, okay, listen to these 3 elements or make sure that you apply this framework? Do you have anything like that, like a secret sauce you would like to share?
I actually have a trademarked method, which is called the freedom method, which actually takes you through a whole program of steps so that you can get to that position. But I think if you're asking me to give something away here, I think something like I call it the wheel of real estate, which is really looking at the areas of your business, but then the areas of your personal life, and marking yourself, say 1 to 10 on how you think you're doing, and taking a look at the areas where you're giving a lot more time and the areas you're not giving enough time to. That's one of the quickest ways to identify which areas of your life need to rebalance. And then from that, it's like the Eisenhower matrix, which is like what is important and has to happen, what is important and you'd like to do, what can you delegate? Like, is there anything in your life that you're doing that you could pay somebody else to do that would actually return value, whether that be in time or the ability to generate more money for yourself? So that's kind of, I think, the 2 key things. If you're in that position, they're the things you should be focusing on.
I love that. Keely, thank you so much for all your insights today. I learned a lot. You gave us a very nice introduction and overview of the Algarve, of Vilamoura. You gave us a very in-depth, insights regarding the AL, the Golden Visa, the NHR, the Brexit, also who's buying, and also the process there. I really like your differentiation of your company. I think it's exactly the way to go. I think we should make sure that we don't treat anyone like a number, be it employees or clients. And your big referral and repurchase client or retention, client retention is definitely like a significant indicator for your success. Finally, you also gave us a very nice overview regarding your program to help moms become a better real estate agent. So, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience today?
I just think that I'm very, very passionate about Portugal, about the Algarve, and about real estate. And I just think that for me, there's so much to learn, whether you're in the industry or whether you're looking to buy a house. Always be open to learning, whether that's new information, new experiences, because they really can totally shape your life in a direction that you weren't anticipating, and that can be so much better for you than the life you had planned.
Perfect. Keely, I send you the best regards to Vilamoura. I appreciate your time so much, and we talk soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
This video is brought to you by HalloCasa. Our tool transforms independent local real estate agents to global real estate agents. Create your own profile for free and get contacted by international investors. Sign up with the link in the description.